All right, ladies and gentlemen, this video will be quick. I'm going to have to try and keep it quick. I have found no way to put up all the videos on this series, you guys. It's been an incredibly long process to develop these bows. And so, on one hand, a lot of the videos I ended up uploading on various topics are so that I can document my progress, especially with a bow. I really like to be able to document my arrow speeds. So this video is in that vein. And as such, I don't know if it will go up, you might think, because a lot of the others don't. But in fact, this one I absolutely intend on putting up because now that this is going to represent two bows that have both had their first couple shooting sessions through them. One of them has already had its first. The other one has had its second and third is going to be today. So we've got 20, 21, 22, 24, and 26-inch arrows. Now, you might say, I don't know, this one's more than 26, but you're right. It's like 26 and a half. So we are going to exclude the 26 and a half inch arrow because it is too big for these bows. In fact, I only included it in the mix because I use it to help break in my bows, guys. I like to have a fairly strong arrow to help me break things in with. And the heavier that arrow is, the better sometimes. And so we're just going to get to it here. Now, I also have the set of 24-inch arrows I've made for this bow, and one of these is part of that set. So all of them will be represented here. We're going to start with the 20-inch with a 10-gram tip, full draw, no skill shot. Nice, right? Penetration check, very nice, through a medium stiffness target section. Well, each section has different stiffnesses, and that is a medium stiffness section. This one's going to have a little skill added to it. Just as far as the arrow speed goes, I want to try and get what I feel like is the best arrow speed I can get with this 20-inch arrow, guys. And that's about it right now. I could try and push a little harder, but that's extra chutzpah. That's all I wanted to see. So now we're going to switch to the next bow. And the reason is I want to see these exact same arrows fired side by side off each bow so I can compare the arrow speeds. If I wanted to do that, that would be what I was doing. That's not what I want to do. I want to document each arrow individually against each bow because I already know what they're like. I don't have any doubts about that. And this one, this 22-inch, I could fire this. It's very light. It's bamboo. It shoots incredibly. I'll shoot one shot with it so you can see. I know I said I would show you guys these at some point. This thing shoots them great. But it's not as badass as a traditional arrow. It's just not. It's just a little lighter. And with that light weight, you lose a lot of momentum. So you do want to have the correct arrows for your bow, obviously. So this one, even though the other one was 22-inch, this one's only 21. This is a heavier arrow, 5-gram tip. And you can see it puts it in with a little more speed. Even though the other arrow is technically longer and gives this one, and it's fired at higher poundage, there's for a speed shot. Felt like that was pretty good. Penetration check, pretty shallow. This is a lighter arrow, a fairly light arrow, guys. Lighter than that 20-gram arrow with a half weight tip that literally is half the weight of the other. A plastic nock instead of a metal nock, but a slightly heavier and longer shaft. But carries less of its weight forward. It's not as forward center of gravity as the other arrow, you might think, but it is because it doesn't have the metal nock, and I have dialed in the center of gravity. They shoot great, those arrows. So we're going to go up to the next size, guys. This is an arrow made for this bow. This is lengthwise, this is 24-inch. Nice, right? Now, I do not want to lay in any harder than 24-inch because this bow is very new, and that was not a 24-inch draw. That was about a 22-inch draw. 20. Maybe I was wrong. I do believe it was at 23. But this is the very first time that this bow is firing an arrow at its full draw length to full draw length when I actually draw this to first draw length. It'll be the first time it's ever done it. And that is right about 23 and a half. That's drawing to 23 and then just adding a little bit of a skill shot, adding a little bit of power. With my actual release coming at about 23 and a half. Ooh, nice. Pretty sure that would be about 23 3/4. Nice, equal penetration, but I went through the Velcro. It's one of the hardest to puncture spots. That's just a gentle draw, but drawing to the exact same 23 3/4. Look at that. The penetration is only getting better. And this is why you have to be gentle, guys. You gently break in the bow. Its first session of movement of the limbs was just a gentle stretching session with my hands, nothing else. Very careful not to get it anywhere near its maximum draw length. And here, I'm doing the same. I'm giving it nice draws, okay, but I'm avoiding anything over a 23-inch draw. And it's funny, I thought I was at like 23 and a bit there for a minute, but when I really looked, I was not. I was more at 22 3/4. That's 23 and a little bit, but on a really calm draw. Meaning I didn't add anything to it. I just drew and then released. Still definitely pillow huntable, but now as it's breaking in, I am noticing an improvement in arrow speeds for sure. Also, this has a 10-gram tip, so I am firing the arrows it's designed for. Man, that's really nice. Even on a really short draw like that, I just add a little hoot spot to it, and it's flying with some really nice speeds. I'm actually kind of excited. So, the goal with this was to show the arrow speeds with the other arrows and document those, and then start running this one out to just about full draw, just shy of, for this session. I won't actually be getting to full draw until next shooting session. So I'm just going to keep laying in shots and watching the bow's progress and seeing if the arrow speeds fall off. Now, when you watch a video later, it might be hard to know if you weren't at full draw. Like, for example, that was not a full draw shot. That was well shy of even close to a speed draw. That was not intended for power. I just fired a light draw to see what would happen. See how it's handling it. Now that was a shot with some hoot spot, as you can see. And I want to keep laying in shots like that every so often. And basically switching back and forth between more gentle, relaxed shots and more high-powered hunting type shots. Because this is intended to be a huntable bow, you guys. Now that is stretching right to that 23 and a half, and I could hear it, and that's nice, actually. It felt good. It made a little sound as the leather moved to a new position, but that is all, and that is what I want to see. Gonna do the same draw again, right to 23 and a half. I still got a little bit left that I could draw, but very little. It's looking nice. It's getting better. And this is what I want to see. Now, in the previous video, I don't know if it'll get to go up, but when I break in, I start with the 20-inch arrows, and I don't go up in size until I see the arrow speed increase or decrease as the brace height starts to adjust. I want to keep, and as the limbs start to settle in and all that, I want to keep the shot going through the riser and the limbs and all that to a minimum. Don't forget, this bow is designed to have all of its components working together, to have the riser actually flex, unlike traditional bows, which means it doesn't really break in exactly like a traditional bow because the materials involved in the carbon fiber are softer. Oh, that's nice. I pulled right to 23 and let her rip. It's actually really nice. Like, it's not high poundage, but it's nice. And I'm feeling 40 44, 45, somewhere around there. And I mean, look at the penetration at that poundage. That's retarded. But that's exactly what I was hoping, was that that's what this bow would be right in that ballpark of being a really sweet 45-pound bow. Now the other one, or 40, and I'm not really sure because I'm not quite at the back of it yet. Like I said, I might not even get to the back of it today. What'll show me when it's time to get to the back of it is when it relaxes that little bit, because right now I'm shooting it at 23 and a bit, and I keep trying to pull to the 24 gently, but I don't want to hear any sounds. If I feel a poundage increase, which of course I will, I let it go right at that moment. As soon as I start feeling like it might be under more strain kind of a thing, I fire the shot. And the reason is I want to add a little bit of strain to it with each draw. Not so much, but I definitely want to add some draws in that increase the strain on the bow progressively. And that time, drawing to the same 23 and a bit, it made absolutely no noise. No noise whatsoever, only that was not 23. And this is the trick. It's like you have to be very careful if you're going to document things, what your draw lengths are. But I know my routine, and all I'm doing here is firing fairly light shots to break in the bow, and then combining it with the odd shot like that, where I actually draw pretty hard, and then add a little hoot spa. But I nowhere near approach that 24-inch mark, even at the end of my adding power. And the results are getting good because I can feel it breaking in. I can see, even on that light draw, I'm getting more penetration. And one of the things I noticed was that as they break in, depending on the bow, they'll either get softer or heavier, as I've said in previous videos, as the brace sight settles. What I've noticed with this paracord is that it really doesn't break in much at all. There's very little stretch to it, and that's really good. So it doesn't settle much. In fact, from where I've set it, I've set it at 7 1/4, and it's at 6 3/4 now, which means in 2 shooting sessions and sitting overnight, from brand new, it's stretched hardly at all. Now that was just shy of like 23 and a half. I'm still right in that zone, and I'm feeling when I'm at that, like it's approaching its back wall. It was designed for a 24-inch max draw, don't forget. And what I want to do is push that 23-inch draw right now and make that my happy place. I'll pull lighter draws, but partly I'm doing that to see if, as it's stretching in, the lighter end of it is getting weaker. And if it is, that's actually bad. But I'm not seeing that. Instead, I'm feeling that it's slowly, gently working itself in really nicely, getting good penetration, feels good. The arrow shots are nice. It's got a nice shock value. There's not a lot of shock in it, but you feel it. And the harder the shot, the more you feel it. It's actually an incredibly nice feeling bow to shoot. All of these bows tend to be so much nicer than a rod bow on its own. And so much nicer than not having a flexible riser. It's so comfortable because it flexes just that little bit. It helps soften it a little bit towards the back end, and you get better arrow speed. And when you can have a reduction in the back wall's poundage without any reduction in arrow speed and pick up arrow speed at the same time drastically, well, that's pretty significant, I'd say. So I don't think I'm going to get to shoot the other bow in this session. In fact, it all depends on the arrows. No, it depends on the bow. Depends on how it breaks in, guys. And so what I'm seeing here is we got a 14-minute video. That's not so bad. Quite oftentimes, it'll take multiple 20-minute shooting sessions to see the bow really breaking in. But I can already see that on that casual kind of 22-inch draw, I'm producing way better penetration than I was to start with. It feels snappier and it feels comfortable. It feels like I've done everything right and it is breaking in correctly. Because because this is nice. And at 22 and 23 inches, it's more than enough to hunt with. And what I was worried about at first, and the reason I went out of my way to recurve it again and do all this other stuff, was it just didn't have the poundage at the lighter arrows to really, at the shorter arrows, to really do a good job. And so this is obviously not that anymore. I mean, it's a total turnaround. And these are just starting to flex the riser as I get to 23. And it's really nice because as soon as you start to move that riser at all, the penetration goes up significantly despite the fact that you didn't draw much harder. And it's like, wait, what? And it's like a 10-pound heavier bow when it comes to penetration as soon as you start doing that. The riser flexing makes such a huge difference, guys. That I feel like this was a very, very successful design. I can still hunt my pillows. It came out exactly the poundage I wanted. Now you might think this would be the time to check the weight. In fact, in the last video I had wanted to, but I could feel that neither bow was actually ready for that. And that's the real trick. You got to learn to feel the back end of the bow out as you're drawing slowly towards it and see how smooth it is. And if you're really struggling to get to that back end, chances are the bow is really struggling to give you that back end, and you need to kind of relax and work up to it. So I don't want to be pushing the bow to stretch. That's not what I want to do. I mean, it's supposed to bend, but that's not bending and stretching. As somebody who does yoga, it's one thing to stretch, it's another thing to bend, but when you start bending and stretching, things get more complicated. What I'm seeing is that this is, and they'll tell you the same thing, you got to work it in slowly or you'll hurt yourself. We pull muscles, guys, we strain things. This is no different, but your body heals and the bow won't. So if you strain your bow and damage the fibers of the wood internally, because you put too much shock through it too fast, it needs to adjust for that. It needs to settle in. And because this is only finished curing overnight and is only really finished now, this is really its first day of being my new bow. And I gotta tell you, I've had bows who did a lot worse on their first day and hunted with them and got my first deer with a bow that shot way worse than this. It shot accurately, like this one. I set it up right, it shot well. Very well, actually. Like this one. But it didn't carry anywhere near the arrow speeds. Also, I mentioned in the beginning, this bow I found much too light in weight. I no longer find that. It's now an incredibly comfortable weight and a really nice, you know, kind of comfy, kind of you could work with it kind of way as a martial artist. Like it's actually perfectly balanced to the point where it's literally perfectly balanced right at the edge of the riser, guys. Why? Because that's where my hand is. And when I go to draw and I'm flipping the bow around fast in a warlike situation, because I'm about to draw on an animal, it gives me the ability to do that very quickly, to sling it off my shoulder and to flip the bow around. It has perfect balance. It comes to hand and I shoot the shot. Now, the only thing I'm going to do, I can feel as a modification here, is I want another wrap right here. And I've got it tapering out, in, and then a little lip that reminds you at the back here, that reminds you when you go down that and you have another one here. And the way they fit my hand, you can see they almost hit at the exact same time in my grip, okay? And so what happens is I feel if my grip is sliding, but it also tends to want to slide up the other way. And I like my grip to be about here, but the arrow to be there. So if I want that relationship, I'd like to put one wrap right here, and I will, and it'll just lock my hand in here so that my hand is always at the exact same place. So technically it's not finished yet. There's finish work to do to this bow. There's finish work to do to the other bow, and the more I like them, the more durable they seem to be, the more I'm willing to put in the finished time and money to make these really nice little bows. But because of the nature of the materials involved and the fact that I've seen these risers look like they're going to be awesome for weeks and then just shatter, I know that I don't want to put too much money into them. In fact, it's too bad really that that's how that is, because my goal was to build a cheap DIY bow that was better than what I've seen on the internet. I succeeded. This is the best bow on the internet. It is the highest arrow speeds. It's the cheapest and easiest to build. For that, it has the nicest draw. I've tried them all pretty much and made a lot of bows in my lifetime, and this, I didn't design this for nothing. Rod bows don't hold tiller very well. It's a round rod. This is not. This is a squared slat, and it behaves very much like a traditional bow and really locks in your tiller and locks in everything. The shelf was a brilliant idea. It works really well. The handle and the length, this is a really important relationship. On this softer bow, it has a long and stiff riser, which means it's only going to really flex at all because of the length of that riser. Had I wanted to go with a shorter riser, I would have had to use a more flexible one to achieve my design. Or a less flexible one, depending on the poundage and the situation and how it was set up. Anyway, I don't know. I mean, I'm just looking in the middle. Fire a light draw, 22 and a half, guys. Pull the trigger, and she's smooth and quiet. Shoots amazing. But did you hear that little bit at the rate at the back when I got to that 23, when I hear the leather? Okay, well, that's not a bad thing, but I don't want to push past that right now. That is the sound that makes me not want to draw past 23. And I noticed that as I do that, that noise gets slightly softer. And that's what I want to hear. That's the sound of the leather wraps, which are very hard right now and were broken in. Hell no, they were put on brand new and then soaked. And then that soak was cured. And those ends are solid now. And that's good because it added a lot of weight. I mean, the wraps are pretty hard now. So because the rod, look at the penetration though, because the rod has to move back and forth. And again, that was a light shot. I'm not pulling anything harder than 23. Most of these shots are 22, 22 and a half. This is 23 and a little bit. And I didn't hear any noise, and it's really zipping in. So that's good. Now, I did mention in one other case, I don't know if I'm going to get to show you guys that video, so I will mention it again in this one. When you are breaking in a bow like this, you are warming it up. And how warm it gets is actually important. If you start to feel it building a lot of warmth in the riser, yo, stop right there. And the reason is, it's going to be flexing, and you don't want to get things hot. Hot changes chemistry. You don't want to affect the glues involved or any of the curing. And that'll die over time as the limb gets worked in. You're building heat in these things as they flex with the friction. Firing the arrow and all that stuff, the shock, it's all building heat. And so what you want to do is warm up your bow by shooting it, which is what I'm doing here. And it's feeling like it's just getting there too. It's nice. I'm feeling like I'm seeing good arrow speeds. I'm not seeing them drastically fall off, which is good. My brace height looks and feels like it's rock solid and hasn't gone anywhere, but I feel like it might have just dropped another 1/4 inch, guys. But I found this bow likes a 6.5 inch brace height. I set it up at 7 1/4, figuring by the time it dropped, that'd be about perfect. That was a really light drop, as you probably noticed. But I do like to give it a really light draw when I think the brace height's dropping to see how it reacted to that. Followed by a fairly hard zippy draw to see how it reacted to that. To see and observe for myself whether or not I'm losing poundage or gaining or whatever. It's one of the reasons I like to film these sessions. Man, I do love this bow. It's got such a nice feel to it when you're shooting it. Of course, when you release hard and punch yourself in the face, the feel is diminished, but still a very satisfying bow to shoot. And as you can see and hear, very snappy, but very nice arrow speeds. And I'm now feeling that exact thing that I was talking about. In that shot, I could feel the riser get a little warm. Okay, now we're going to let it relax. We're going to let it cool. So that bow has had its next warm-up session, and this is part of its break-in. Now, I was correct. In the beginning of this, I stated that I did not think it would really get to 24 inches, and I put the longer arrow aside. That's why. This is the 24-inch arrow I was shooting. It's pretty ratty. It's pretty beat up. It's not really the most accurate one. You can see why, but at the same time, it didn't exhibit any signs of poor accuracy. In fact, it's so locked in, I'd swear it was made that way. So now we're going to move over to this guy. So it has had longer to cure. It was finished first by about 18 and a half hours. And so, or maybe more, a little 20, 22, 24. I've been up till 5 in the morning, both nights in a row, working on these and getting them done. Partly because if I hadn't, this would only have a few hours of being solidified on it in the morning, and I wouldn't have been able to shoot my video on time. Same with the other one. It's like I try to get them done as quickly as possible as far as that goes. It's hard enough to slow things down sometimes to film it all instead of just pushing forward and building my bow. So I try to kind of accommodate both, kill two birds with one stone. The brace height dropped a little, which on this bow likely means a stronger bow. So you can see, as soon as you go to put that on, and the arrow sits cleanly on the shelf and securely, and I securely affix the nock, you can see that it's sitting on an angle, and that my nock now needs to slide slightly up. Now you might think because I treated the string that that's not viable, but you're wrong. It actually is snug, and I have to strain to do it, but I can absolutely move that. Ooh, kinky. And again, with this bow, even though it is technically capable of a 21-inch draw, I have not yet technically drawn it to a full 20 inches, nor do I intend to in this video, because it's much the same. It's breaking in really nicely. It feels really good. I don't want to damage anything. I don't want to overstrain it. And it is quite strong compared to the other one. The stronger the bow is, the more you have to be careful about breaking it. Not so much. The stronger ones, you can generally get away with it. Like this will draw to 21, and I'm just going to be drawing a 20-inch arrow. I really can't get myself into trouble there. But I still want to warm it up gently. It's a new bow. The limbs, the string, all these components have just been put together. And they need to kind of coalesce. They need to settle. They need to build some chemistry and learn to work together. And so you kind of want to just go slow at first so nothing gives if something was inclined to. In this case, I know nothing's going to break, which is why I said I feel pretty comfortable. But even still, how you feel is irrelevant. What's best for the bow is what's at hand. And so what I want to try and do is be as gentle as I can on the bow in general. I still need to raise my nock just a touch. Nice. And this is still, I mean, I'm looking at 17 and 18-inch draws, guy. And this is still nice. Now the poundage did settle a little bit as the brace height dropped, which is actually really nice because in the end, it's not exactly a lightweight bow. The other one is. This one's 50 pounds, and it's really nice, really nice. In fact, I'm still shocked I got that much poundage out of such a small bow without a shatter. And it's really very much more satisfying to shoot, but it's still not done. It's still just breaking in, guys. Things are just adjusting and aligning and settling in place, and it still shoots incredible. Feels very locked in. In fact, it doesn't feel like, unlike the other one, which is noticeably breaking in and getting better arrow speed as it does, but not changing the poundage. In fact, it's only gotten a little stronger as the brace height settled. This one got softer as it settled in, but given that that one was too weak and this one was too strong, perfect. But that's the idea. What I want is basically one bow that's 50 at the absolute back ass end, like this one is, but I'm using an inch shorter draw length than it takes to get me there. And these arrows are only rated for, 50 or so. And if I'm going to be running them hard, that just went through and through, guys. So what I am seeing is, as I break it in, even though I'm not feeling much difference now that it's settled, I'm not seeing any difference as far as arrow speeds. They feel about the same. What I am seeing is more penetration, even though it was no slouch for that to start with. And now that I'm really looking, yeah, that actually feels like it just picked up a little bit. Now, this is why I do my shooting sessions in very careful segments. I want the best arrow speed that I can get, man. And one of the keys to that is breaking your bow just right and learning to heat it up, but not overheat it. It's kind of like, look at it like breaking in a car. You want to run the engine and the seals at the right temperature, and do that slowly and do that a couple times before it's broken in. You'll need to. And if you start driving it hard, even the factory will void your warranty right away, even of a sports car. What does that tell you? Go buy a Ferrari, and the first thing they tell you is to keep it under 3,000 RPM for the first 300 miles. Or you could get that, and all of a sudden you ruin your compression, and your car's a weak piece of shit. I don't want that. I want that. I want pinpoint accuracy. It nails the spot I'm looking at. It gives me enough penetration to kill the target, because this is intended to be my backup hunt bow. This little shorty I keep in my pack in case my main hunt bow breaks. That's what it's meant to be. And a good bow for hunting porcupine in the bush, which, as I pointed out, is actually one of the survival techniques I developed when I was young, was to hunt porcupine and leave them for the predators. Make sure it smells like you. And that way, when that predator eats that dead porcupine and it smells like you, he'll know you killed it. And he'll be your buddy right away. Oh, man, I remember you. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's the guy, man. He killed the porcupine, man. Let's get him. Yeah, man. Let's lick him. Yeah, man. Believe it or not, I woke up to kills outside my goddamn tent because I hunt porcupines, and the animals are grateful. Porcupines kill so many of their babies, it's not even funny. And so a good porcupine killing bow has to prick them from further range than they can prick me. It has to be light and fast because they're small and the little bastards are agile. It's like trying to hunt a squirrel on steroids. Try that. Luckily, porcupines don't move anywhere near that fast, and they're actually a real easy kill compared to a squirrel. So like a squirrel on steroids, they are not. But I can tell you, this is the second time now, really the third time, I guess, since I built this bow that I've done the warm-up thing, and I'm warming up the limbs, and I'm checking tiller, and I'm giving it shooting, but I'm light shooting. I'm using an arrow that will not get to the back of the bow no matter what I do. Perfect. And this was designed to shoot these 20-inch arrows reliably. And as you can see, it didn't really fail. I got my goal. I got my bow that matches my arrows pretty much too. As far as the bigger bows go, they really do. In fact, I'm going to pull out one that up until this point in the series, you won't really have seen. So I'm going to show you the 3 set right now. So I'm just going to set this up. I've got a couple arrows here, and I think I know what to do. Again, light shot, and that really was a very light shot, guys. A couple inches of drop. And that's not even a full draw, guy. That's just me drawing to about 15, 14, and then fast drawing to about 17, and snapping out a good, strong shot. And look at the speed out of that, combined with penetration. And that's what I want to see. That's really what I want to see, man. I mean, this bow, it's going to be a wonderful little hunt bow. I can turn quickly, aim, and shoot, and it's pinpoint accurate, even underhanded. And I came to find for a porcupine hunting bow, all those features are incredibly important. And so you don't want to go porcupine hunting with a big, long bow. The first time I did, I had a setup like that. you might think. No, I had a little short bow I made in the bush. It wasn't very strong, but it turned out to be the perfect thing for hunting porcupines because it meant I could hide. I made a little berm around my tent and I could hide behind it, look over, see the little bastards, and I was literally right in the middle of their territory too. So I could just look at, see, raise, and shoot and get them. And it worked really great. And then duck back, and their little buddies would fire their little quills at me. And I mean, I literally was in a war with porcupines. But it was a war that I won. And it was a war that all of the other animals in the bush were really, really grateful for. Of all the animals in the bush that you could kill, there's only one that will make you universally loved by everything else. Porcupine. And this is an excellent little porcupine hunting bow. And that is the plan for it, is that it will be an excellent little porcupine hunter. And so far, hey, mission accomplished. Really accurate, fast shooting, nice poundage, not so crazy that it's brutal, but not so light that it sucks. Now, here's the problem. I got a weight belt sitting right there. I'm dying to see what the technical weights of these are, but they're not broken in yet. The last thing I want to do is squish the shallow end of it by running it all the way to the back end. What I mean is, if I were to draw this, overdraw it, say an inch farther than I'm supposed to, it could squish elements in here that aren't supposed to be squished and that aren't fully broken in yet. And then you would lose arrow speed, and you would especially lose arrow speed at the low end, at your smaller arrows, which, given that this doesn't operate at its back end and is designed to operate on those shorter 20-inch arrows, it would literally ruin the bow and its intended purpose if I should ever do that. So the goal, by using 20-inch arrows and having it top out just over 21 3/4, makes sure that I don't ever put it into that danger. And even if I overdraw a little bit, I still won't be in danger of damaging the bow. But within that, I wanted it as high a poundage as possible so I could get as fast a shots as possible. What you might not realize is porcupines are quick little bastards. Not quick on their feet, but they're quick to fire their damn quills. And those quills come out shooting so fast, you do not want to get hit by one. So my porcupine hunting bow is the one where my life is on the line the most. I'm way less worried about what I hunt deer with than I am with what I hunt porcupine with. Because hunting porcupine is bloody dangerous. I'd way rather hunt elephants or rhinoceroses or anything. Porcupine is one of the most lethal things I've ever considered hunting. And it was the only thing I ever tried to hunt that came close to killing me over and over and over again. I can't tell you how many times I've actually been hit by quills or how many times it's hurt, but I can tell you that a heavy blanket helps a lot. And then you line that blanket with Kevlar or a good fabric, a good thick, heavy weave fabric. And you make yourself a kind of a bomb blanket. And that helps too. You can lay on the ground, crawl with the blanket on top of you into their territory. And that way when they shoot at you, you have protection and you can look out from underneath and shoot at them. And it actually works because their quills aren't meant to shoot at things at ground level. They all aim up. So if you're laying on the ground and you do that, he's dead. It's one of the reasons why I have my bow set up, shoot like this. So I can be here. See the point? I can rest that on the ground. Just like that. Boom. And it's settled. Right here. And then draw my arrow. And it makes it more stable when I'm resting it on the ground. I could put that spike right into the ground if I have to. And use it like a crossbow. It's a wonderful hunt bow for me, for the style of hunting that I do with this bow. But this is why I've said before, I always carry two bows, ideally. And now I don't always. In fact, in the past, I never did because I just made my bow in the bush. I say always because now I have enough bows. I never had this option before. I can have a really short, light, easy to carry bow that is nice poundage, 50 pounds, smokes anything I shoot it at, kills anything that points at. It's badass. Okay, I've never had that, and at the same time had a really good hunt bow before. I only ever had one bow, and I always had to make sure that that bow could do everything. And it's one of the reasons why you see me designing my bows so that they will be as versatile as possible. Now, sometimes that comes in the size of the rounds that they fire, and sometimes that comes in the fact like this little 20-inch arrows. Yo, it doesn't need anything else to kill with it. I could kill you at long range with that arrow. I could kill you at short range with that arrow. It's very accurate on a light shot and doesn't lose accuracy or get all sketchy on a heavier shot. Unless you're really wonky with the paracord, it's more flexible right now because it's new. But once I treat it, that paracord gets more stiff, and the rest of the bow is so solid. It really locks things in, and your shooting gets even more stable. So that'll also add more feet per second. So that bow isn't even finished. Neither of those two bows are done, guys. They're still technically improving. And the best part is they're not broken in yet. And I can see in both cases, I'm continuing to fire light shots from them. And for the second time in a row with this bow, I have seen an increase in its feet per second while doing that. And I basically stopped firing harder shots trying to get towards its back end as soon as I saw that increase. But that's why I just increased its flexibility a little bit by pushing it towards its back end just that little bit more, maybe a quarter of an inch, and then consistently pulling to that point for a few shots in a row. And then I back off and fire a few shots gentler, then come back onto that point and fire a few more shots at that point, then just push a tiny little bit past it, then stop, then go back to shooting the shorter arrows to give it a break. And I find doing stuff like that helps me to keep it from overheating any of the glues or various components, because in different bows, you're going to have different components. I don't know what glue you're going to use. In any material I found, in any construction methods I found, I've made factory perfect bows in a shop. I've made bush bows. And no matter what, they all needed to be broken in, and none of them were at their best until they were, and they were all susceptible to breaking early on compared to what they were later. And so I'm going to end this one. It is, again, getting pretty long, guys, but totally worth it, man. Totally worth it. These two bows are lovely. Now, when I said I would bring two bows, you might assume that I would bring these two. Well, this is the lighter poundage bow. I didn't build this for that. If you remember, I built one, I wanted one to hunt with that was short and easy to carry and light. Voila, Estila. Success. And I'm thrilled. I even did a Navajo prayer on this bow that it would be blessed and that it would provide for people and be good in the world. And provide for me and keep me safe. And it's an ancient thing, but an akana ho chika ita witsa ita wa ka e a kanara shurara we kunapsa irash a awe konas aret on tonda fe. So I smudged it and did a little smoke ceremony with it, which really for me means I mix weed and tobacco in a pipe like I always do. Smoke some, only I don't smoke it. I puff on it and I blow it onto the string and the bow's body while I say the prayer. In fact, I treat it in silence and then I do the prayer. That being said, this one basically got the same deal, but a totally different prayer, because this one is more like a kid at play. I want to have fun with this bow. I want to enjoy it. I want it to be a good bow, and I want it to do my part if it needs to. If it needs to feed me or defend me, it will. It's a good bow. But neither of those is my hunt bow. My hunt bow will be one of these two. Or this one. And I haven't finished it yet. And I haven't finished that one yet. I haven't shown you guys these ones yet, really. And they may appear in other videos, and that's fine. But in the end, I haven't done a reveal on these, and there's a reason. They are not finished. I have the material. I just don't know if I want to use this material. As I've said, I'm not very happy with it. It's not the best one I could get. I don't want to wreck this. I want to put it with the best material I can get, which means I got to wait. Same with this. I could use the material I have, but I don't need to. It is finished. It works great. It's not, the stuff I have worked okay, but it's not the best waterproofer. And what this needs is to be sealed. So I want to just keep it and let it sit and relax and stay that way, and that's fine. But I also have broken it in. I have shot it. It has had 3 or 4 different shooting sessions through it already. I just haven't finished it. And one of the reasons I haven't is because the rod had a tendency of sliding back and forth. Now I've glued everything in place and locked it in place enough that it should stay still. I redid the wraps, I painted it, I locked everything in place, I let the wraps swell to hold the rod tighter in place, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I don't even know if it's done yet. I don't know if that's going to work. Because this one has had a really hard time keeping its rod in one place. It wants to slide back and forth all the time. So I don't consider that finished, but it is a really nice poundage. It's the strongest of the four bows. But as always, usually the strongest ones, the strongest small one was really hard to build, and I went through a couple before I found one that didn't shatter. I had to make the riser the exact right stiffness and length and all that, and there was some experimentation there for me to figure out exactly what was the minimum I could recommend for you guys, which basically means I have to test everything to destruction and then tell you what broke. So what I can tell you is this length, you don't have to worry about that. What you worry about with a bow this long is poundage. And this one is actually really sweet. It'll fire the 20-inch arrows really nicely. It'll fire 26-inch arrows really nicely. It'll fire whatever you want. It's got enough poundage. If you put 36-inch arrows on it, you'd still shoot them. But it wouldn't be anywhere near as well. That's just how it is. You want to get the right arrows for the right package, right? This bow is 26-inch arrows, same as this one on its back end, but it's so strong you don't fire 26-inch arrows. And if you did, you'd wreck the ones I have. What it's doing is the same as the other, actually 20 to 24. So that is actually the high poundage version of that. And this has no direct relative, because to ask a bigger bow to do all these things, to be snappy and fast, and it doesn't need to be. A bigger bow, you don't go to war with that. You don't go hunting in a war-like scenario with that, because it's just not fast enough. You don't want a big longbow trudging through the bush. The biggest I want to be able to carry is something like this, you might think. Well, that's fine. But a bow of this limb length is good for shorter range, but not necessarily at long range. And if it is going to be good at long range, it has to be super powerful. And asking that of those materials will eventually lead to its destruction. And I didn't want that. Usually my bows are more, solid. But these are feeling better and better and better as they break in. And just like any other bow, at the beginning, it's easy to break. But as you break it in, it gets to be impossible. When I first built it, I could break this easily, just drawing it to 20 inches. Now I can't break it drawing to 20 inches. Even with a 21-inch arrow, I can't break this bow now. I can draw it as hard as I want. I can add whatever skill shots I want. That's how I knew it was done. That's when I locked everything in and extra treated the string and did all this other stuff to make sure it was finished. Now I just have some cosmetic things I want to do, but that comes later and is really unimportant to the shootability of the bow. In fact, may even negatively affect it if I over brace it or do something else while I'm putting pretty elements on it, or add gunk to it, deaden the string or deaden the limbs while I'm adding stuff to it for pretty. Well, I don't want that. I want it functional, man. I don't care if it's pretty. This looks good, man. Looks a lot better than my bush bows did to some degree, but it also doesn't. I mean, they looked so nice and wood and natural and with a nice wood treatment. They look very pretty. This is different. I like this. This is snazzy. These look cool. I like the color. I like the way that it is. I like that it's flexible, that it's not even wood. It blows my mind that I'm able to make a bow this good and I didn't use wood. Instead, I used bamboo, fiberglass, and carbon fiber. I mean, all my life I've had other bows, but I've always built wood bows, and I'm really jazzing on these bows. I got to tell you, they're definitely the best bows of this series. And I will tell you, from decades of making wood bows that shoot at these kinds of arrow speeds is incredibly difficult. I mean, you don't think so? You go look at any of these bows, even the steel bows and all these other bows that are out there. Yo, I've watched all the reviews too. I was shopping for bows for ages, thinking when I got my money I'd just buy one. But the ones I saw looked like they were shooting pretty weak arrow speeds. The ones I could afford from China, I wasn't confident enough they'd come with really high quality, and I was a little worried. And then when I saw that the ones here, I could pick up a Hoyt, a short bow just like this, exactly like this, same length, same brace height, um, only a factory manufactured bow from one of my favorite companies, and it was inexpensive. It was inexpensive enough if I was willing to go broke for the month like I did to shoot this video, because that's what it took for me to make these. I could have just gone and bought a factory bow. So is it worth it? Well, for me, it is. I really love to build. The other bow was much, much bigger and the exact same poundage as this, but twice the length. It was bigger than this bow. It was the size of these bows, which isn't a bush bow. That was not meant for hunting. You look at a compound bow, you look at a crossbow, yo, they're small bows, they're short. That is why when you are going to hunt porcupine or anything dangerous, or have a bow for defending yourself in the bush, even, that's one of the reasons I like to carry two. I will have this in my hand all the time in case somebody close by, like the local hostile bear who's really mad at some asshole traipsing through his territory and wants to kill me. That will stop him in his tracks. Believe it or not, I will kill him with that. Same with this. I can kill him with this, but I need to be careful where I aim, and I better have pulled a 24-inch arrow. Whereas this won't care what arrow I pulled out of my pack. Any arrow I got, it'll kill with, because my arrows will be 20 to 24 inches. But this one, I draw that 20-inch arrow at that golden moment when I needed a 24, and I might actually be dead because it doesn't have the poundage to rip it out hard enough and fast enough to kill him, unless I got him right in the eye, and then he's dead for sure. But you need a pretty high poundage bow, and it's the tips you use, right? So we're going to cover that in the future. This is about the end of this series. Even though I do have two more bows to make, the process is the same. I'm just going through the process, dialing them in, adjusting them as I need to, like a boyer should. And that's it. And what I will say is these are done. They shoot amazingly. But I will document the next couple shooting sessions so you guys can see them break in, and so that I have a record of that break in. In fact, I consider that record to be more important than the early documentation of the build, because these have all changed significantly since then, and all I really need to know is what the changes were, because the construction is dead simple. And because I've already shown you guys lots of construction videos on the rod bows, I'm not bothering with these bows. This is just a rod bow, riser, rod. It's there. Only instead of just a shim in the back, I put a bamboo slat. Strap the two together, and there you go. So there is no need for a construction video on these at all, which is one of the reasons I love them. I said I would make a better rod bow. This is the RXD longbow. No, this is the RXD short bow. Pair. We've got our 35-pound bow, and we got our 55-pound bow. And technically that's what that is at 22 inches. This is 45 at 24 inches. But they are perfect. They are such a nice matched pair. They are very comfortable, well balanced, easy to handle. They're great designs, and they are a superior rod bow. The fiberglass riser helped a lot. So did finding the right cord and treating it. You can see the treatment on here when you look really close in the light. It's really solid. This string is solid. And all of these little things add together, right? The shelf, don't go changing that. This is perfect. This is one of the best DIY easy shelves I've ever seen in my life, and it slides arrows off it so naturally and so smooth. It's almost like it was made for it. That being said, I'm really excited, guys, but the real struggle for me has been, unlike the first version of this I made, which was great, but my excitement led me to overdraw it and I shattered it. You got to break them in slow, guys, really slow. When you have a bow you like, if you made it to fire 24-inch arrows, fire 20, and then fire 21, and then fire 22, and stop there, and then start at 20 again, and just keep doing that until your arrow speeds start to pick up, firing those softer arrows. Then slowly work your way up. That is the formula. That's the way to do it. That is what I'm going to stick to. And that is why I like to document how many shooting sessions each bow has had on it, so that I know when I watch it later and see the arrow speed increase about where that happened. And I can kind of track the changes and consistency. And I'm real scientific about my process. You don't have to be to come out with a good bow, man. You just make it. The trick is to know what you want ahead of time so that you can engineer it for that. I knew I wanted a porcupine hunting bow and a deer hunting bow. Those were the goals. Yo, I can hunt deer with this. I've hunted deer with way worse than this. I can absolutely hunt deer with this, and I will. I can also hunt porcupine with this, or deer, and I will. And they're cross compatible. Whatever arrows I put on this, I could fire through this. And this one's locked in enough now where if I grab the wrong arrow, I'm fine. This one is actually the one that fires the bigger arrows. And when I'm shooting at longer range, I have time to look, make sure I grab the right arrow, make sure I'm take careful aim, and then let my shot go with a little extra chutzpah and not worry about the deer seeing the movement. Whereas this, you don't have time for that. You better have a strong shot. It better be fast. It better be accurate. It better be right goddamn now or I'm dead. It's more like that. That's what this is for. This is a totally different kind of bow, and so are those. In fact, this is the one I originally designed to be my hunt bow, but it's not done yet, which means if I went today, these are my bows. I would take them both gladly and be proud to own them. I love them. They are solid. They shoot really well. They are very comfortable to shoot, very minimal hand shock. This is definitely a series you guys are going to want to check out. These are the very fastest shooting, best rod bows ever seen, period. I have never seen anything of their like, and I have seen them all. They are superior in every way. In fact, they are so good, they are equal to the very best Hoyt and Matthews competition bows I ever used, and I dominated competition with one of each, baby. And I can tell you, with an undefeated record, that came from having perfection in my gear and in my practice sessions and in my shooting. And you got to have everything right for that. Now, these may not quite be perfect yet, but they're barely even dialed in. I just built them and I'm just breaking them in. I'm more worried about arrow speeds than accuracy. And breaking them in evenly and slowly guarantees a nice even tiller, guys. That's one of the golden rule reasons that I do it. Sometimes you overdraw them, you pull too fast, one limb doesn't break in the same. You want to bow it gently, 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 and let it break in at that. Let those limbs bow evenly to that point, then a little farther. If they're not bowing evenly, when you draw hard, it'll only make that worse and things will break. But if you start gentle and start drawing and start gently bowing the bow, gently bowing the bow, gently bowing the bow a little farther, and then keep repeating that, and then go a little farther and keep repeating that, and feeling the warmth in the riser. As soon as it feels warm, stop. Feel the limbs. If they start to feel warm at all, stop. And let them cool. When they feel cold to the touch again, go ahead and shoot them. Believe it or not, that matters. You want to make sure that you break them in slow. I cannot say it enough times. I would still have the original one, even though I would have had to rebuild it because the limbs kept coming out of the pocket because I gave it too short a riser and too short a limbs. It still would have survived. As it was, the limbs shattered like a twig twice in a row. On different size risers, different flexes. It didn't matter because I wasn't breaking it in. It's under high poundage and the limbs are very short, which means it has to be broken in very, very precisely. This one, the longer the bow, the more forgiving. The shorter the bow, the less forgiving. Keep it.